There is a strange trap that stops more dreams than failure ever could. It stops books before they are written, businesses before they are built, ideas before they are explored, skills before they are learned, conversations before they are spoken, journeys before they are begun. And the strange thing about this trap is that most people do not recognize it when it appears, because it does not look dangerous. It does not feel dramatic. It does not sound destructive. It sounds reasonable. Maybe later. Maybe after coffee. Maybe after I feel more focused. Maybe tomorrow, when the mind is clearer. Maybe next week, when life is less chaotic. Maybe when I finally feel motivated. That is how it enters. Not as its enemy, as a suggestion. And because it feels gentle, people accept it. They do not see what it is stealing. They think they are delaying action. In reality, they are delaying momentum. And momentum is not a small thing. Momentum is the hidden force that carries effort forward after the first resistance has already been crossed. Without momentum, every task feels like lifting a ship by hand. With momentum, the same task begins to move almost on its own. Modern culture constantly tells us that motivation comes first, that inspiration must arrive before effort, that energy must appear before movement, that success belongs to people who feel ready. But the Vikings understood something simpler and harsher. The sea does not move the ship. The ship moves the sea. A ship can sit in still water for hours. It can wait for wind. It can wait for certainty. It can wait for the perfect moment to leave the shore. And it may remain there forever. But the moment the first rower places the oar in the water and pulls, the relationship changes. The ship moves, only a little. But movement begins. That small change is everything. Because now another rower can join, and another, and another. Rhythm forms. Direction appears. What was fixed begins to travel. This is how meaningful work begins. Not with confidence, not with certainty, not with emotional fire, with a first stroke. This is why waiting is so dangerous. It trains the mind to confuse stillness with preparation. It makes a person believe that not beginning is somehow wise, mature, or strategic. But often, it is only avoidance wearing the mask of thoughtfulness. And avoidance always grows in silence. A task delayed once is easy to ignore. A task delayed 10 times becomes heavier. A task delayed for months becomes part of your identity. Now you are not just avoiding the work, you are becoming someone who does not begin. That is the deeper cost. A person does not lose dreams all at once. They lose them in small moments when movement was possible. But waiting felt easier. The Vikings rode because they knew something the modern world keeps forgetting. You do not discover what is possible while standing on the shore. You discover it after the first stroke of the oar. That first movement does not solve the whole journey. It does not remove the distance. It does not calm the sea. It does not guarantee success. But it does something more important. It breaks the illusion that beginning must feel glorious. Most beginnings feel awkward. They feel unconvincing. They feel small. They feel almost unimpressive. But history is not built only by grand acts. It is built by people who move before certainty arrives. The writer who opens the page. The builder who draws the first rough line. The athlete who trains before energy appears. The creator who begins while still doubting. The person who decides that movement matters more than mood. That is the lesson hidden inside the image of the oar. You do not need the whole voyage. You need the first pull against resistance. That is where momentum is born. And that is where waiting loses its power. Most people want beginning to feel powerful. They want the first action to confirm that they are finally disciplined, finally ready, finally transformed. But beginnings are usually smaller than pride expects. That is why many people dismiss them. Yet the small beginning is exactly what opens the door that thought alone cannot unlock. The first pull matters not because it looks impressive, but because it ends the reign of waiting. Every important action begins with a quiet, psychological battle. It happens in ordinary places, at a desk, in front of a blank page, at the edge of a workout, in the first minutes of a difficult conversation, at the start of a project that matters enough to make you uncomfortable. You sit down, you look at the task, and suddenly the mind becomes heavy. The work seems larger than it did yesterday. The steps look less clear. The effort feels more expensive. You begin imagining the whole burden at once, and then the mind begins offering alternatives. Check something first. Organize the desk. Read one more article. Make coffee. Answer a message. Wait until the mood improves. Start later, when you feel sharper. These thoughts do not sound like sabotage. They sound practical. Sometimes they even sound responsible. But beneath them is something older than reason. The brain is scanning for escape. Not because the work is impossible, because the work is uncertain. The human brain dislikes unclear effort. It does not want to spend energy when reward is distant and discomfort is immediate. For most of human history, this instinct was protective. Energy mattered. Weather mattered. Food mattered. Injury mattered. A bad decision could cost more than time. So the mind evolved to ask a simple question before effort. Is this worth it right now? If the answer is not obvious, hesitation appears. This is where procrastination begins. Not in laziness, in hesitation, in ambiguity, in the small internal pause where the mind delays commitment long enough to create alternatives. The longer that pause lasts, the stronger the resistance becomes. Because the mind does not stay empty during hesitation, it starts producing arguments. You deserve rest. You should wait for better focus. You are not ready. This is too big. You need more clarity first. Every argument makes the first movement feel more expensive. The Vikings lived in a world where hesitation could be fatal. Storms rose quickly. Currents changed. Enemies appeared without warning. A crew that stopped too long to debate at the wrong moment invited danger. So they relied on something stronger than mood, decisive action under uncertainty. This does not mean recklessness. It means understanding that clarity often appears after movement begins, not before. A ship tied to shore teaches you nothing about the sea. You cannot read the current from stillness. You cannot adjust the sail while refusing to leave. You cannot learn the shape of the voyage while demanding certainty from land. The same thing is true of work. A blank page remains frightening while it stays blank. A difficult project remains abstract while it remains untouched. A life change remains mythical while it is still only imagined. But once movement begins, reality starts replacing fantasy. The first sentence reveals the second. The first 10 minutes reveal the true difficulty. The first attempt reveals what needs improving. The first step reduces the size of the unknown. This is why beginning matters more than feeling ready. Readiness is often a myth created by people who do not want to experience the friction of entry. They want the middle without the beginning. They want rhythm without awkwardness. They want progress without the first imperfect movement. But the beginning is always where the illusion breaks. The mind says the task is unbearable. The first action proves that it is bearable. The mind says the work is too large. The first action gives it edges. The mind says you cannot begin now. The first action creates a new reality in which beginning has already happened. That is why hesitation is dangerous. It keeps a person living inside imagination. Action returns them to reality. And reality, while rarely easy, is usually kinder than avoidance makes it seem. That is why so many capable people lose days in the doorway of work. They are not defeated by the project itself. They are defeated by the emotional fog that appears before the first movement. Once that fog is crossed, effort becomes more honest. The task stops living as imagination and begins living as reality. And reality, though still demanding, is usually easier to work with than the fantasies created by avoidance. One of the greatest myths of modern self-improvement is the worship of motivation. People are told to find their why, to wait for passion, to summon inspiration, to consume enough speeches, quotes, or high-energy ideas until action suddenly feels natural. But motivation is unstable by design. It rises and falls with sleep, stress, weather, hormones, memory, emotion, and dozens of other forces that do not ask for your permission. To build your life on motivation is to build your house on changing wind. Some mornings, you wake with energy. Other mornings, even simple tasks feel heavy. Some days, you feel clear and determined. Other days, your thoughts are slow and resistant. If action depends on feeling motivated, your life will advance only on the days when inner weather happens to be favorable. And inner weather is not loyal. The Vikings would have understood this immediately. A crew cannot cross cold water by saying, "We will row when we all feel inspired." A longship does not leave shore because morale is perfect. Distance is not reduced by enthusiasm. Distance is reduced by strokes. That is the crucial word. Strokes. Not one heroic act, not one dramatic burst. Repeated movement. The first rower pulls, then another, then another. At first, the ship barely shifts. The effort feels heavy. The water resists. No one would call that moment glorious. But the ship is moving. That matters more than emotion. This is what people misunderstand about momentum. They think it is a magical state that descends on the lucky. In reality, momentum is often a reward for repeated motion under imperfect conditions. The first few minutes of work are rarely beautiful. The first page is rarely brilliant. The first attempt is rarely elegant. The first workout is rarely satisfying. The first difficult conversation is rarely smooth. But if a person remains long enough for rhythm to appear, everything begins to change. Attention stabilizes. The body settles. The mind stops standing outside the effort and begins living inside it. The task no longer feels like an abstract mountain. It becomes a sequence, then a process, then movement. And movement changes emotion. This is the secret. Motivation often follows proof. When the brain sees evidence that action has begun, it updates its expectations. The task is no longer something I should do. It becomes something I am already doing. That shift is enormous. Identity changes inside that shift. A person who waits feels passive. A person who begins feels active. A person who delays sees themselves as uncertain. A person who enters the task starts becoming someone who moves before certainty. The Vikings did not trust the future to mood. They trusted rhythm. Pull, recover, pull again. action that is almost boring in its repetition. That is how seas are crossed. That is how difficult things are made real. Modern people often want to feel their way into movement, but movement is often the thing that teaches feeling where to go. This is why the first stroke matters so much. Not because it is powerful by itself, because it breaks the spell of passivity. Once the oar enters the water, the fantasy of waiting for perfect wind begins to lose its hold. Now there is contact with reality. Now there is resistance. Now there is direction. Now the body and mind are in relationship with effort. And relationship with effort is what changes a life. Not admiration of effort, not theory about effort, not the identity of wanting to be disciplined. Actual strokes. The lesson is simple and severe. Do not wait for motivation to carry you. Use action to call motivation into existence. The sea does not reward people for thinking about sailing. Responds to pressure on the oar. A person who understands this stops asking, "How do I feel about beginning?" and starts asking, "What is the next stroke?" That question is smaller, cleaner, and far more useful. It does not require passion. It requires contact. The next stroke might be tiny, but tiny movements done in sequence are exactly how ships leave shore, how pages become books, and how stalled lives begin moving again. There is a reason small starts work so well. The mind fears totals. It fears the whole chapter, the whole workout, the whole conversation, the whole project, the whole uncertainty of a path it cannot yet see. When the brain imagines all of that at once, resistance grows. This is why the 2-minute entry is powerful. It does not argue with the mind at the level of the whole journey. It narrows attention to the first contact. Write 1 sentence, read 1 page. Practice 1 passage. Clean 1 shelf. Draft 1 paragraph. Open the file and stay with it for 2 minutes. The point is not impressive output. The point is entry. Entry matters because it changes the position of the self in relation to the task. Before entry, you are outside the work imagining it. After entry, you are inside the work experiencing it. That distinction changes everything. Imagined effort is often huge. Lived effort is usually smaller, more textured, more specific. It has edges. It has sequence. It can be responded to. The Vikings understood this physically. No one rows the entire voyage in 1 act. No one conquers the sea by staring at a map and demanding certainty. They row in strokes. And each stroke reduces the distance that used to feel impossible. That is how overwhelming things become manageable. Not by shrinking the ocean, by accepting the humility of the next movement. Modern people often resist this humility. They want a beginning that feels powerful. They want the first 10 minutes to prove they are capable. They want momentum immediately. They want the early phase of the work to feel convincing. But the beginning is not designed to flatter you. It is designed to test whether you can move before feeling rewarded. The first sentence may be awkward. The first draft may be ugly. The first 10 minutes of focus may feel restless. The first day back to training may feel weak. None of that means the method is failing. It means you are in the beginning. The beginning is where the mind renegotiates its relationship to effort. It is where fantasy confronts reality. It is where avoidance loses some of its power simply because the work is no longer untouched. And even if the 2-minute entry leads to only 2 minutes, it still matters. Because it teaches the brain that beginning is possible without emotional permission. That lesson is much larger than the tiny action itself. A person who repeatedly begins before feeling ready builds a different nervous system. Not literally overnight, but behaviorally and psychologically. They become less impressed by resistance. They stop treating hesitation as truth. They start recognizing discomfort as a threshold rather than a command. This creates a new identity, not the identity of someone who always feels inspired, the identity of someone who knows how to enter. And entering is the whole game. The Vikings crossed seas because they accepted the logic of strokes. One pull would never feel like enough, but enough pulls would become a crossing. A person writing one sentence may feel they have done almost nothing, but a sentence is a stroke. A cleaned shelf is a stroke. A difficult call made is a stroke. A page read with focus is a stroke. Stroke by stroke, the mind stops worshiping perfect beginnings and starts trusting movement. This is how discipline becomes practical rather than mythical, not by becoming fearless, by becoming willing to begin small. Do not ask whether 2 minutes is enough. Ask whether stillness has helped you more. Most of the time, it is not. 2 minutes is not a miracle. It is simply enough to shift you from thinking about movement into creating it. And once you are moving, the task can finally tell you what it really needs. Small starts also create a second gift. They make return easier. A person who works only in giant, heroic bursts often disappears when the mood breaks. But a person trained in entry can come back tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. The skill is not only beginning once, the skill is becoming someone who knows how to begin repeatedly, even when the beginning feels unimpressive. That is how consistency is built in real life. Waiting looks passive, but it creates weight. Every delayed task leaves a residue in the mind, a message unanswered, a page unwritten, a room not cleaned, a call not made, a decision postponed, a creative impulse ignored. These things do not disappear when you look away. They move into the background. And the background of the mind is not empty. It carries tension. This is why people so often feel tired before they have done anything meaningful. They are not only carrying today's effort, they are carrying yesterday's avoidance, last week's unfinished intentions, last month's half-formed promises to themselves. The emotional cost of postponement accumulates. At first, it may feel like mild discomfort, then mild guilt, then background pressure, then quiet overwhelm. Eventually, the task itself is no longer the only problem. Now the task comes wrapped in shame, frustration, self-doubt, and the memory of all the times it was avoided. That makes beginning even harder. This is one reason procrastination is so deceptive. It appears to remove pain in the short term. You do not have to face the task right now. You do not have to enter uncertainty right now. You do not have to feel awkward, unprepared, or incapable right now. But that short relief charges interest. The task returns heavier. The mind returns less trusting. The self returns more divided. The Vikings would have recognized the foolishness of this quickly. Waiting on the shore never made the voyage shorter. It never made storms less likely. It never made the sea safer. It only kept the crew still while time passed. And stillness under the illusion of preparation is one of the easiest ways to waste a life. Movement, by contrast, interrupts accumulation. Movement reduces the load. Movement turns a ghost into a process. An untouched task can haunt you. A started task begins to organize itself. A delayed call grows in fear. A made call turns into information. A blank page produces dread. A written page produces direction. This is why action is emotionally medicinal in a way that thought is not. Thought can circle. Action converts possibility into reality. Small movement is enough to begin that conversion. One email, one paragraph, one rough outline, one page of notes, one resumed workout, one uncomfortable but honest sentence. The mind interprets action as evidence, and evidence is what changes self-trust. Not promises, not identity statements, not the idea of becoming disciplined someday. Evidence. I began. I continued. I returned. I made contact with the work instead of only thinking about it. Every time this happens, the background weight grows lighter. Not all at once, but perceptibly. And a lighter mind starts more easily tomorrow. This is how a person escapes the trap of accumulated delay. Not by waiting until everything feels manageable. By moving before the load becomes heavier. The Vikings did not start with certainty. They started with courage and repetition. The ocean was not made gentle for them. They learned how to move in relation to it. That is the real lesson for modern work. You are not trying to create a life where resistance never appears. You are trying to become someone who knows how to move when it does. Waiting increases the emotional cost of beginning. Movement reduces it. That is why the first stroke matters beyond symbolism. It is not just the start of progress. It is the interruption of accumulation. It tells the mind, the task is no longer only something I fear. It is now something I am in contact with. And contact is where dread begins to lose its size. This is why people often feel relief the moment they finally begin. The task may still be difficult. The solution may still be unclear. But the torment of untouched effort has changed shape. The mind no longer has to carry a pure abstraction. It carries movement. And movement is easier to live with than dread. A person who learns this stops treating action as punishment and starts seeing it as the only real way to reduce the pressure that delay creates. From the outside, achievement looks dramatic. People see the finished book, not the hundreds of uncertain openings. They see the strong body, not the mornings when training began without desire. They see the successful work, not the long period where nothing felt impressive except the choice to continue. They see the arrival and forget the rhythm that made arrival possible. But rhythm is where nearly everything meaningful is built. The Vikings understood journeys through rhythm, not fantasy, not emotional intensity, not the dream of perfect conditions. Stroke, recover. Stroke again. Adjust. Continue. That is how distance disappears. Not because the sea suddenly becomes easy, because movement continues long enough for the impossible to become ordinary. This is one of the most useful truths a person can absorb. You do not need to conquer the whole task today. You do not need to solve the entire project before beginning. You do not need to become your future self in order to take the next step. You need the next stroke. That is all. The next real action. The next true contact with the work. The next sentence. The next page. The next repetition. The next 2 minutes. Modern minds resist this because they want certainty. They want to know that effort will pay off. They want proof that beginning is justified. They want emotional permission from within before they commit. But the sea never offers guarantees before departure. And life does not either. The Vikings rode anyway. Not because they knew every outcome. Because they understood that stillness reveals less than motion. You learn the sea by moving through it. You learn your capacity by using it. You learn the task by entering it. This is the final lesson of the first stroke of the oar. Beginning is not merely a productivity technique. It is a way of relating to uncertainty, a refusal to let temporary reluctance become permanent direction, a refusal to confuse emotional weather with truth. You may not feel ready. You may not feel motivated. You may not feel clear. You may not feel powerful. But feelings are not always instructions. Sometimes they are conditions to move through. The person who learns this gains a massive advantage, because most people remain loyal to mood. They act when it is easy. They stop when it is heavy. They delay when they are uncertain. They postpone when they are not inspired. And slowly, their life takes the shape of hesitation. But the person who learns to begin anyway creates a different shape. Not a perfect life, not an effortless life, a directed life, a life built by repeated entry, a life built by small beginnings that compound, a life built by strokes. The next time you sit before something important and feel that familiar heaviness rise, remember this: you do not need the whole journey. You do not need certainty. You do not need a wave of motivation. You need the first movement, the first honest action, the first contact with the work, the first stroke of the oar. Because once the water begins to move, the journey is no longer imaginary. It has begun. And the one who learns to begin again and again will always travel farther than the one who waits for perfect wind. The beginning never has to feel glorious. It only has to happen. Then it has to happen again. Then again. Over time, the repeated act of beginning becomes one of the deepest forms of self-respect. You stop asking your moods for permission. You stop building your future around a fantasy of effortless readiness. You trust the old law of the oar. Water yields only after contact. And so does life. That is why the final question is not whether you are inspired enough to move. The final question is whether you are willing to let movement teach you what inspiration never can. Work reveals itself through doing. Confidence grows through repetition. Direction appears through contact. The ship learns the sea by entering it. The self learns its strength the same way. Not by waiting on shore, but by pulling once more.